Victorville City Council and the City of Victorville Planning Commission. And at this time, I'm going to call the council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would we have a roll call, please?
Here.
Here.
Bias is absent.
Here.
Here. To give just a short background, the Victorville City Council, about a year ago, or close to it, had received sufficient complaints about the way that the town looked that we seriously talked about code enforcement. And we began the process, and of course not everybody's happy, especially those that received the warning, but all those people who live beside the person who got the warning are pretty happy with us. That continued, and we did have requests to clean up neighborhoods. We had some major problems as a result of a recession, which the city did not control, and neither did any person in this audience. But we had a vast amount of houses that became vacant because property owners decided that they owed far more than it was worth, and we all know what happened. Some of the portions of the city became, I don't, it sounds derogatory to say a ghetto, but it looked terribly bad. And so we talked about how do we change this. Again, that's code enforcement. The second thing is how do we make sure that we don't have this again, if we can possibly do that. As you know, we had been kind of beaten up over a lot of issues that this council had nothing to do with, and even if we had to do with it, you can't control the economy. So we looked at different areas. We looked at citizen complaints. We looked at some of the things that we had needed to look at. The end result was, after some months of superficially discussing it, we held a study session of the council and the staff to talk about what we want the city to become. And this strategic planning session took most of the day, was a free flow of information. We did have some members of the public to attend. They were all invited. We had some good input, and we started the process. There's a lot of issues that we're going to be talking about. The planning staff took an item to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission held a hearing and continued that. The purpose of this meeting is the Planning Commission and the City Council can hold a joint session and invite anyone and everyone who is involved in building, development, taxpayers, fee payers, homeowners, citizens, registered voters, to have an input in this process because each and every one of you have a say-so on what this community is should look like, what we need to do to ensure what it can look like in the future, and what we collectively want up here is what's best for the city. And I really truly believe that what's best for the city is what's best for all of us, not absolute every instance, but it's best for all of us, including people that are in the development community. We know that we're going to make some changes. We don't know exactly what they are. We know we have a lot of proposals, and they cover the gamut. So whatever you can imagine, from leaving it alone to going to 2.5-acre lots, it's been suggested by different people who have different reasons. Our only reason is because we care about the city. We're concerned how it's going to look and how it develops and how we can provide the best service to all the citizens. So what we're going to do at the study session, we're going to spend just a couple of minutes for comments from each of the planning commissioners, if they want to do so, each of the council members, if they want to do so. And then I'm going to ask the staff to explain the various maps that they have and what has been discussed. And then I'm going to, we have the public comments for people who want to comment, but if you demand, because it's on the agenda, I'd like for you to wait, because I'm going to assume it's related to item 2. After the staff gets through, I think you would be better informed to make the comments at that time, and I think it would make more sense to the council. so I'm going to be substituting that second. Now, a word of caution. This is a legally called special meeting of the City Council, and as a result, public comments mean exactly that. You can talk about any item that you want to, but we hope that it's on this subject matter in regard to the single-family residential lot sizes, design guidelines, and specific plans and public PUDs. When I call on you, we are going to invoke that 3-minute rule. We have to do that. There are instances when people want to talk so long, and they do have information that if you go beyond the 3 minutes, please reduce it to writing and send it to us. We do read those things. But if we go too long, we begin losing people, and people are critical that they had something really important to say, and they just couldn't wait as the meeting went on and on. So please try to hold that to 3 minutes. We will take the input from everyone, and then we're going to close that portion, because the reason that we're here is to get input. We're not going to be making any decisions tonight. In fact, from the point of view of the council members and the Planning Commission, we're not going to have any debate with the audience tonight. We are here to get information. We're here to allow you the opportunity to provide input, ask questions, make recommendations, and keep in mind that even though I have cards here, and I will call on you as these cards have come in, we may need to get back to you, in which case we want you to fill out a card, and when you come up to the microphone, please give name and address, and if you don't want to give it publicly, give a card to the city clerk so we'll have it so we can reach it at a later time. So at this time, is there any comments from the Planning Commission members or the City Council? And I'm going to start on my right. Mr. Huber?
No comments.
No comments?
No comments.
No comments? Not at this time. Well, they'll have, all of these members up here will have a chance to comment later. Mr. McEachran? Mr. Garcia? Myers? Mr. Kennedy? Okay. At this time, then,
I don't have a comment.
I'm sorry, I didn't start.
There's too many of us up here, I know.
No, I'm not far right enough.
No comment.
Okay. Okay, that takes care of all the Planning Commission and the Council. At this time, I'd like to have the staff to come up, and we have the maps. The staff informed us it'll take about 2 hours to do this right. We're going to give them 20 minutes. Okay, staff, you're on.
Good evening. Hello. Good evening, Council and members of the Commission. Yes, I would like to start our staff presentation by apologizing to both of the Commission and the Council. I know Doug did a little bit of that last week, but as well, we understand that pushing this item forward when it's a very complex issue with a lot of different ramifications wasn't probably appropriate without this type of discussion first. So we do apologize for that. For the Council members who don't know Scott Webb, he is our senior planner. He has worked for the city for almost 10 years and lived in the high desert for his entire life. Scott is the one that, when Ryan referred to 8 years worth of design guidelines we've been working on, Scott was the one behind those design guidelines. He did the design guidelines for the different commercial, multifamily, and industrial as well. And in addition, when you see new development happening in the city, the commercial development happening, you can blame him on it being prettier. So Scott is our guy in that terms of that respect. So moving on with that, we'd like our first slide is regard to what Mr. Cox mentioned. The goals of the strategic planning session, what we ended up with were these 6 goals. 3 of them are in direct relationship to the residential, and that's the safer community, higher value residential, and cleaner, prettier community. Also discussed in there were objectives that we were hoping to accomplish in 2014, and 3 of those relate to this issue, with the first one being on this agenda: implementing higher neighborhood design and development standards, then increasing code enforcement, and developing and implementing a planned growth strategy. Also discussed in the document or during that day, during that session, were quality of life, multiple families living together, absentee owners, and the need for higher quality housing. Now, with that, we'd like to go ahead, Scott. I'd like to start with what we saw as some of the problems, because the goals talk about there's an issue with housing. So what were we trying to address in our proposal? And that's what Scott will start that.
Good evening, Council, members of the Commission. We appreciate you holding this joint meeting, and we'll try to get through this quickly, but we're trying to kind of consolidate what we've proposed and give you a snapshot first of how we came up with the recommendation that we did. First off, we wanted to focus on that. What are the issues with our housing stock? I'll go through these briefly. And the proximity of our dwellings was an issue that we've come across. We've seen through code enforcement and increased complaints, mainly based upon neighbor disputes. We were also seeing that a decrease in property values as associated with the density of our neighborhoods. The small lots that we currently have restrict access for potential RV parking on the side and rear yards. This also leads to increased on-street parking, which could be detrimental to the property values as well. And as Chris touched on, the city does currently have design guidelines that cover other aspects of development in the city. And what the design guidelines would primarily do is get away from the production design of our current housing stock. As you can see in the pictures, there's a focus on production, limited amounts of variety between houses. That leads to a decreased sense of identity in the neighborhood, decreased property values, and a sense or a lack of a pride in ownership. Also, as Americans, we are an automobile society, and since World War II, our housing stock has been transformed based on our reliance on the automobile. As you can see in these photos, that's all that's along the streetscape. The Daily Press might not get everything right, but this was a picture that they took of a neighborhood in northern Victorville, the lower picture. And as you can see, it's dominated by a garage. I don't really see any windows in this, and that limits the visibility of a resident to look out onto the street. This also decreases the neighborhood character. And we grappled with whether or not we should display this slide, and I think there's some useful information that we can derive from it. What our GIS system looked at is we took 3 geographic areas within the city, all 3 of them being a square mile or 640 acres. And they're varying lot sizes, Brentwood being the most dense housing, leading to our R1 district, and then the square mile, which has half acre. What we can state is that obviously you have more houses, you're going to have more calls for service. And what actually we found in this scenario, that it also relates to the crime rate. So where the square mile has a lower crime rate, which is the number of crimes reported divided by the number of houses, we're showing that not only you're getting when you build denser neighborhoods, in this scenario, you're getting more volumes of calls for service, but in this scenario, you're actually getting more of an increased crime rate. Focusing on raising the value of our neighborhoods, we looked at what the current stock of the Victor Valley is. And as you can see, our median sell price is down towards the bottom. And we asked ourselves, what is it that the surrounding communities have that Victorville doesn't? And some of the common traits are larger lots, custom construction, that leads to more identity and neighborhood character. Also, there's amenities that are geared towards specific users, such as retirement and recreation. These neighborhoods could also be called as saying that they have a more increased sense of place and sense of safety. Looking at our inventory in Victorville of what our current housing lot size is, And you can see from this snapshot, this is all of our developed single-family homes within the city as of today. And you can see that we've kind of put all of our eggs in one basket, and that's mainly between our 7,200 square foot minimum lots. As you can see, the fourth column is where those R1 lots are located, and then as they taper to the right, that's actually still R1 lots. As you get cul-de-sacs, or if they have a large easement, you'll still see that they have some larger lots. They may not be usable. And we'll get into more later in the presentation about how this would affect the inventory if we increase the lot size.
I hate to interrupt, but
Sure.
is this vacant lots or developed lots?
These are all developed lots. So this is a current assessment. And I'd like to add 57% of our houses are on lots less than 8,000 square feet. This is a slide of what happened during our last construction boom. We're actually tending to develop more densely than our overall housing stock. Most of our larger half-acre lots that we're seeing on this previous slide are from county jurisdiction that when we annexed in, these are older subdivisions. We're not actually subdividing new, larger lots right now. Also, what's happening is over the last 14 years, we're adding more people per household. Whereas in 2000, we were close to the median average household size of approximately 3, and we've now upped it to 3.4. So what's happening is we're creating neighborhoods that are more dense, smaller lots, and at the same time, we're actually having more people live within the neighborhood. This actually can lead to kind of what we're trying to show here in these pictures is more vehicles on the street, and more projects that might not be completed, like you see this El Camino in the driveway. And this leads to depreciation in home values. Okay, now to summarize what the staff recommendation is, it's split into two groups. Yes, we are bringing forward to you a proposal that would increase the minimum lot size for single-family residential. That's focused on our R1 single-family residential, would increase it from 7,200 square feet to 10,000 square feet. Also focusing on our specific plans and plan unit developments, we would be creating a baseline of 7,200 square foot minimum lots within those communities. Also affiliated with these standards would be updated development standards for the 10,000 square foot lots. Would be increased setbacks, so there'd be more separation between the neighbors, and single-family residential design guidelines that would be geared towards increasing the value of the neighborhood and creating neighborhoods that have more of an inherent value that will appreciate over time. This is just a comparison of what we have currently with a minimum 7,200 square foot lot and what would occur if we increased the lot size to 10,000 square feet. This is representative of approximately 25% increase per lot. As you can see in the comparison that there's additional space between the units, more room for the RVs to be pulled out of the front yard area. Also what we did is we took a typical 7,200 square foot lot subdivision, which is depicted here, and we overlaid a 10,000 square foot lots. So in this case, they went from 75 units to 51 units. What we also want to show is that the minimum widths and depths still allow the developer to use the same street pattern that may have been shown in a tentative map.
That was the point of argument before, that they're losing their total investment. And that's not true. The engineering work that they've done, the topography doesn't change, the drainage may not change. They can utilize the same street system. Yes, it does result in a loss of lots, but it doesn't mean that it's out, you know. A typical developer would then look at this and try and redesign it to get more lots. So it would, you know, that's what we foresee happening.
All right, just to summarize, the purpose for the increased lot size, it adds variety and diversity to the Victorville's housing stock, and this is a general plan goal that's currently instated. As you can see in that previous graph that showed our inventory of lots, we have a vast majority of them in the smaller range. This also includes space for our growing household size that's been shown over the past 14 years. This would also add space between neighbors to decrease neighborhood disputes, provides off-street parking for areas for RVs, accommodates space for a variety of floor plan layouts, including larger single-family story products. It also balances the housing needs for moderate and above moderate housing within the city, and would also reduce public safety costs. Before you here is a snapshot of how the proposal would impact the existing 74 square miles that we have in the city. The area that's shown in the yellow is what the proposed R1 10,000 district would be changed to, and also in the purple shows our plan unit developments and specific plans that would be amended to have a 7,200 square foot lot. Just to give you an understanding of the size that we're talking about, the proposed R1 area is 9 square miles. The plan unit developments is 2.4 square miles. And also shown on this map is the finished R1 lots. This represents about 1.7 square miles of recorded lots. These would retain their 7,200 square foot sizes, mainly because obviously they're recorded, but about 60% of them are on streets. They already have curb gutter and sidewalk in, but they're half completed. So indirectly, what may occur in this situation is there may be more of a demand to actually make the developers finish the projects that they started. This is just an overview of how the development standards would, as they compare to the 7,200. Our R1 10,000 district would increase the side yard setback by 10 additional feet between the units. And we can kind of switch back to this if we get questions from any of the council or commissioner or the members of the audience to just explain more of it as we go along. The single-family residential design guidelines, there's mainly two overriding focuses that we geared the design standards for. And they're to create safer neighborhoods through arranging the physical characteristics of a neighborhood in a functional manner where residents obtain a greater surveillance level of adjoining areas. And these are defensible space practices that are known in the planning field that help optimize the surveillance within a community and gives the residents a sense of taking their own safety under their own control. So as we've seen in the previous slides where we have a streetscape that's dominated by the garage, there's not livable space up at the front of the house, you're in a sense, you're limiting that resident's ability to survey their neighborhood. Also, these standards are aimed to increase the value of neighborhood by emphasizing architectural quality and variety. I'm not going to go through all of the design standards, all the nuts and bolts of them, but I want to kind of give you a snapshot of one of the main objectives and components that would affect the single-family lot development. And we coined this term, but it's the 50-50-50 rule. It basically says that garages shall not comprise more than 50% of the dwelling street's frontage. A tract development shall not have more than 50% of the required two-car garages oriented towards the street as a forward-facing garage, and a minimum of 50% of the dwellings within a housing tract shall include a front porch. And as I was mentioning earlier, this is geared towards providing optimal surveillance and bringing more of the interaction out towards the street, increasing neighborly interaction with the front porch. And why we brought this project forward to you and why we feel the urgency to talk about it is we can't ignore what's currently in our entitlement pipeline with the city right now. Currently, we have 28,200 existing lots with developed dwellings. In the pipeline currently right now, we can increase that under the current standards by 68%. And I know, and I'm thankful that the council has put these goals into place, because if we are going to make a change, we need to address what's in the pipeline. Because at that point, what's the use? We have most of our undeveloped residential area spoken for at this point. Those 19,000 lots are split into 3 categories. The recorded lots, which I showed on that previous map, represents about 1.7 square miles. Those would retain their current 7,200 square foot standards.
But would have to comply with the design guidelines.
That is correct. Yeah, and we'll get into how they'd still be able to comply with those design guidelines in a further slide. But we have the vast majority of what's in the pipeline is in tentative maps, investing and non-vesting maps. Specifically, our R1 district, just to show you how much of these maps take up what's left to develop in the city, only 33% of our R1 district has no entitlements left. I'm sorry, has 0 entitlements at this point. So currently we have about 9.2 square miles that's spoken for. This represents the R1 district. Again, the green area is the recorded maps. Orange area is what currently has a tentative map, and the red area currently has no entitlements on it. Of those 19,000 lots, they're split into 130 tentative maps that are filed with the city currently. The majority of them, 59%, haven't entered the final map plan check. So these were developers that came in, went to the Planning Commission, got a tentative map approval that was good for three years. And just to elaborate, the 41% that did file a map, those included engineering for the streets, curb gutter sidewalk, storm drain, the final map engineering, street lighting, you name it. That's all part of that submittal. And we've seen that since 2007, there's been a decrease in that activity. We don't see developers knocking on the door at this point to record their map. You may ask, well, why do we have that many lots in our pipeline? Well, we can thank our state legislature for approving automatic extensions. And this is kind of unheard of, because our last the previous construction boom in the early 90s, late 80s, never had these extensions added onto them. So when we went into the next construction boom, we were looking at new maps. So we potentially, if we don't address the tentative maps that are in the pipeline, we could have the same development occur over the next construction boom.
So that kind of sums up what we saw as the issues were and how we tried to address them. We can stop there if you'd like, or we can go into some of these issues on the screen.
I think probably because of the number of people who want to speak to this issue, and if it's okay with the planning commissioners and the council, we can always come back to the staff and maybe give a chance for the individuals who have come here to speak. I have a lot of questions. I'm not going to ask them all right now. Probably most of them I'll submit a memorandum, and then we'll talk about it in a public meeting later. But I just have one question two questions I want to ask, and then I'll let you go. You talked about crimes related to numbers of houses. I'm curious, do you have any way to determine number of owner-occupied houses versus rental houses? And do you have any crime stats? Secondly, the value of those neighborhoods. Do you have any data at all? I don't need to try to answer it now. I probably don't have that, but it's something that
we don't, but we can look into it and provide a
I'm just
map.
curious. The other question then, in regard to maps, I know we have subdivisions that, for example, the landscape maintenance districts haven't been finished because only a portion of the tract is lived in. We have houses have been sold, people are in those homes. If you go down the street or behind, they're rough graded with curb and gutter. You go another block away, they're rough graded. Another block away, nothing. But it's all the same tract. Which ones are entitled? Which portion of this? Because they've divided it into 5 parts and recorded the map on the first one. Does that mean the entitlement doesn't extend to the remainder?
The
Because it's expensive.
The lots that you're looking at out in the field that have curb gutter and sidewalk, those are all recorded track maps, and they represent about 1.7 square miles of the roughly 10 square miles we have in the pipeline.
If
Okay.
they, maybe to expand on that a little bit, if they have only recorded a phase and there's other phases left that need recording, when they expend subdivision improvements, infrastructure, they build that extends their map automatically through the Subdivision Map Act for, I believe it's 3 years.
And what about the remainder that they didn't record, but it's a part of that overall development?
That's what I'm referring to.
Oh, okay.
Those tentative maps that they haven't finalized yet would be extended based on their expending money on the first phase.
Okay.
However, they could expire in the future.
That would extend that also then? That would extend their maps? They would have an entitlement
Correct.
then? Okay. All right, any burning questions from members of the council or planning commission before we proceed with the public input?
I had a question.
Okay.
When did the lot size change to 7,200 square feet for the minimum? The reason I ask is when I looked, because I went through my neighborhood, and then I also looked at, and I'm in the third phase of a development, but in the first phase, there were lot sizes less than 7,200 square feet. In mine, they're all over 7,200 square feet. When did that change?
You know, we don't actually know the exact date, but I could say it was.
Roughly.
You know, it evolves over time. I could say that these developers would come in and have their chance to propose for a zone change or smaller lots. I don't know definitively when it actually started, the 7,200 square foot lot. It is, from what I understand, a somewhat of a standard industry lot size of 7,200. It is common, though, for other communities to have a range of lot sizes, not just focus on the 7,200 lot.
Right.
And I guess another point would be the city has annexed so many different areas. I mean, we started as Old Town, and then we've grown from there. And a lot of that time, those annexations included lots that were already there, houses that were already there. The 7,200s, I imagine, go back a long way, though. But yeah.
Because our development initially started 2002. The one I happened to look at, those houses were all completed in 2005, and it's one strip that's all between 6,200 and 6,800. But yet you go, and it's all same developer, but then you go all around that, and the lot sizes vary anywhere from around 7,400 up to over a quarter acre. So, but it's just a couple small little sections that are all the single stories, no 2 stories. But I was just curious because it's, you know, in talking with my neighbors, because between Thursday and Monday, I spoke with a couple of my neighbors on my cul-de-sac, and I asked them, do you guys feel like you're too close to your neighbors? And they didn't. But the couple comments that I got from the owners that had the larger lots that thought that's what they wanted when they first moved in is it's a lot to keep up. It's depending on how the house is offset, there's a lot of yard there.
That's a great comment, and we should have pointed that out as well. We are in no way, shape, or form saying that there aren't people who don't enjoy living in 7200s or even smaller. There are. We're just pointing out that if we want to get better, we think that one of the ways we do it and provide a diversity and a variety of housing, this would be a way to do that. So it's an option. But no, there are nice streets, there are nice neighborhoods. We give you bad pictures, but there are good pictures out there as well that we could show you. So we're not trying to.
I think to this specific question, it's a good question. And after the meeting, if you'll get the data, look back, it may be that the subdivider himself voluntarily made them larger for whatever reason. I don't know that. Good question, needs to be answered. And all the questions that get asked and then get answered, we are going to have another meeting. We're not going to resolve this tonight. And even the questions that don't get answered, we'll try to answer them at subsequent meetings if we possibly can. We want everybody to get all the information we can possibly provide. That's a good question.
Mr. Mayor, I have a potential answer for Commissioner Wilson's question, actually. I'm in kind of the end of a development of someone in Eagle Ranch, and speaking with that developer, he saved his largest and what he considered his best lots for the last homes he was going to develop, and because prices were on their way up. So he was intending on making those his jewel. So that's, at least for my case, on my cul-de-sac, I think my lot's about 15,000 square feet. But that was essentially the end of his development. He wanted to save those for the end.
All right, at this time, we're going to, staff, thank you for that presentation. At this time, we need input. We want input. We invite input, recommendations. I don't have a lot of cards based upon the number of people here. I only have 6 cards, unless there's some more. Are there any more? Where's the clerk? That's it? Well, we're not going to cut it off. I want to invite everyone to have a chance to come up. But I'm going to take these cards in the order that I received them. Kevin Canning.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Council and Commission. Thank you for your expedient attention to this matter. I'm here representing KB Home, owners of approximately 900, a little over 900 lots within the city, half of which are within planned unit developments or specific plans, and the other half unrecorded tentative maps. And forgive me if I'm just a little disjointed. I want to adjust my comments based upon the information I've just received.
Sure.
One of the first things I noticed is the first slide staff put up noting 5 goals for 2017 that came out of your strategy session. I think all of those are related to a strong housing market. The strong housing market will help the city meet all of those goals, and not just 3. The other point is there was a mention of the state legislature extending maps 4 times. I think actually only 3 of those affect any maps that are still currently valid. One kind of predated. I think you need to recognize why the state legislature did that. It recognized the value and the investment that had been made in getting tentative maps approved. And you can't throw that investment away and expect the housing market to come back. And the housing market is a very strong economic engine throughout the state. So I would hope that you would respect that for the investment that has been made. In looking at new design guidelines, I would urge you to understand what will be the result of a lot being recorded as 7200, but having to be developed under a 10,000 square foot set of development standards. Increased setbacks, et cetera. You may, pinch down an area, and all you have remaining is area for a 2-car garage in the front. But that'll be an exercise we go through our series of workshops, and KB Home pledges to be an active participant in that. The overall goal is to achieve a safer, more beautiful, vibrant community is something that we support too. It benefits all of us. So that's why we're here, and we want to work with you cooperatively to address these issues. A couple of specific items. Staff report mentions defensible space and cites Oscar Newman. Predominance of his study almost 40 years ago, some a little bit newer than that, was on project housing in very urban cities in the East Coast, or row housing built around the end of the World War II. And is not directly applicable. The most common application of defensible space that I have seen in current development is actually to move homes closer to the street. You know, yes, with the porches and that kind of thing, but
10 seconds, if you can wrap up, please.
thank you very much. And then I would also ask that staff cites, in terms of meeting the California Environmental Quality Act, Section 15061B3, which is commonly called the common sense exemption. We would ask for a little bit more expansion of that discussion and thought process, because we think changes that we're potentially looking at, we just want to be sure everything is looked at. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Raised some interesting points. We're not going to try to provide answers and debate these. One of the things that we are concerned with, however, for all of your concerned people who have acquired land, spent money, spent engineering money, graded, and then because the economy had to stop, we're very aware of changing the rules midstream, and we're going to try to do our best to work out an agreement that will make us both happy if we can. We're not just going to turn a blind eye to all of that effort on your part. We recognize the good faith effort that you've made, and I think we've all been affected by having those the economics affect us too. So we are sensitive to that. The next card is Mike Rothschild.
Thank you. I just wanted to, first of all, say that I agree almost 100% with the Planning Department's recommendations. I can't find fault with one single recommendation. Each one of them has quality issues behind them. The pictures are certainly a story out there. 15 years ago, 7,200-foot lots were reasonable, but the generational things, the economy and the way people live has changed. We're now having 3 and 4 cars to a single-family residential now. So larger lot size as a basic standard is a reasonable adjustment to going forward. How you get there, staff and legal people will deal with that. But I think it's an important concept that needs to be embedded. For us, most of us making those decisions, we thought 7,200 feet, sure, everybody does it, why not? And at the moment, why not? But today you can take a fresh look at that, and I would strongly recommend. Look at the pictures there, and you can see that the crowding that is coming in does affect crime in the neighborhoods, and it affects crimes in the residential and the retail areas as well. The way you adjust that or accommodate people that would like smaller ones, the PUCs and the specific plan community is the way that you would make the adjustments for smaller living style, and begin to have people, when they're coming in and making these developments, broaden out. The traffic is horrendous in the city, and no small part of it is that we've got more cars on the street today in this town than the housing would indicate. We have 3 and 4 cars to a family. 2 generations in one house is nothing unusual at all anymore. So those are the kind of things that have changed over the last 15 years, and you need to address it, and I think your staff has indicated a strong inference towards that. Also, property values in the community will go up. And I mean, my house, it's sitting there today. Everybody's house goes up as you raise the standard for the incoming houses as well. So I'd recommend that you positively consider what the Planning Department has offered you. That whole list, the pictures, everything is a telling story. Any one of you know, when you drive around town, you can see the same things. It's not, you don't have to throw them up here and let us freshly see them. We're living with them on a daily basis. And the traffic will mitigate itself as you begin to widen it out. And I'd love to see a much better, the property values in Victorville. My wife would be up here telling you exactly the same thing. She's disappointed that Victorville doesn't have more nicer homes within the community. She harped on me for years and years on that one, and when we were allowing people to come in with their 7,200-foot lots. So anyway, I do recommend everything the Planning Commission says, not one thing I see wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rothschild. The next card that I have, Bess Klein for Victor Valley Associate of Realtors. And the next speaker will be Mr. Robert Harriman, so we can kind of get positioned. But go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. Thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. I have a letter that I would like to read that to go into the record, please, and this will be my comments. Okay.
If it's less than 3 minutes, be my guest. If it's
Okay.
more,
I'm
bad luck.
here representing the Victor Valley Association of Realtors. I'm a past president and director, and I'm here for Carrie Leon, the president, and the Victor Valley Association of Realtors. Dear Council, the Victor Valley Association of Realtors is the professional trade or association that represents more than 1,100 realtors and real estate professionals in the high desert, including in the communities of Atlanto, Apple Valley, Hesperia, and Victorville. Recently, the issue of minimum lot sizes has arisen in an idea in the city of Victorville. We believe that this move will provide some challenges for property owners, city infrastructure, and city funding. We have submitted the city's proposal to our National Association for legal analysis of the impact this ordinance will have on property owners, property developers, city income from development impact fees, city infrastructure demands, public safety impacts, properties currently in a transaction, other impacts we should consider. We respectfully request that the city take a look at the overall impacts of this proposal. It is likely to have some very dire unintended consequences. We expect a response from our attorneys within the next few weeks, at which time we will be considering what our next steps might be as an organization with regard to this issue. Sincerely, Carrie Leon, President of Victor Valley Association of Realtors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Got another card here, I thought. Robert Harriman.
Good evening, everybody.
You are? Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think Mr. Rothschild hit everything. He pretty much said everything I was going to say. I would just like to point out a couple things. I've been to a few meetings, and my biggest complaint has been signs, shopping carts, you name it. Everything's getting very trashy, especially in my area, and I've been in my home for 25 years. A street cleaner cannot clean my street. Too many cars. Not enough room to park anything. There are people with their driveways, not a vehicle in them, but they're parking on their front yard, which is dead, has nothing green. It's getting ridiculous. Now, there has been a demographic tidal wave in this area, ethnically as well as median income. And it's starting to show. It's creating an element that I do not see the city going forward with. So I would like everyone to, I honestly myself feel that a 10,000 square foot R1 doesn't go far enough. If people don't want to take care of a yard that's 10,000 square feet, then don't buy the damn yard. Don't buy the house. So as an excuse for someone to say it's too much yard to take care of is a cop-out. If you don't think you can take care of a house when you buy it, then don't buy the house. Now, the gentleman put up some examples of some houses with larger lots. Those are beautiful, okay? I'm a contractor. I see this stuff all the time. Two-car garages are just about obsolete, just as the single-car garage became obsolete with time. I would also like to see the houses have more personality, a porch in the front, not just a garage face. That enables people, and what they do is they sit in their garages and smoke cigarettes, give people funny looks when they walk by, and it's gotten out of hand. Multiple families living in my neighborhood, and I'm willing to bet that 25% of my neighborhood are renters, and I'd say 12% of them are Section 8 homes. That just disgusts me. That's not what I came to Victorville for. I'm very disappointed, and I would just like everyone to realize even the golf course, our Green Tree Golf Course had some beautiful older homes from the 50s.
10 seconds.
That neighborhood looks terrible now, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harriman. The next card I have is Dorothy Miller.
I have a little problem with the larger lot size. People don't keep their yards up now. What's going to happen if they have more yard to take care of? Most of them work down the hill, and they don't have time to take care of their yards. They don't have time to do what they need to do. And it just really bothers me, the things that are really going on. They're sending people up here because it's low housing. Send them up here. And we're fighting the whole ball of wax. We're fighting the criminals, we're fighting all this, and we don't need it. We really don't need it, but larger lot size, people won't have time to do what they do. They have half-acre lots down behind me, and you should come and see some of that property. You wouldn't appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Carlos Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Carlos Rodriguez, Building Industry Association, Baldwin Chapter. Want to thank you for the Planning Commission and the council scheduling this much-needed workshop. Unfortunately, there's not much I can say in 3 minutes, so I'm hopeful that we'll have the opportunity to have a meaningful dialogue where the business community can have a meaningful discussion with staff and talk about some suggestions that we have to be part of the solution. What I'm distributing to you tonight is something that I think has been severely lacking in the discussion, and that is the economic implications of what's being proposed. I have not heard yet from staff at all about the implications of job creation and sales tax revenue and just any aspect towards the goals that I'm sure have been discussed in the past have everything to do with a more vibrant community, and that starts with jobs and folks having a place to work in the great city of Victorville. And so what I wanted to share with you is just a simple message tonight that housing equals jobs, and unemployment equals crime. So we have not really seen any compelling empirical data that would really prove the point that home ownership and more home ownership in the city of Victorville in the years to come will result in crime. And so what I have shared with you today is, you see on the first page is permit totals from 2005 through 2013. And what you'll see there is that in the boom time, 2005, 2006, there was 2,200 permits and approximately 3,000 permits respectively. And then each of the corresponding years, as you see the decline down in 2009 to 252, and each of the last 2 years we have seen approximately under 85 permits in each of the last 2 years. Now, correspondingly, during the time in 2005, unemployment, if you looked on page 2 of the handout, unemployment in Victorville was roughly 6.4%, and now it's 11.4%. So again, more activity, more home ownership, more jobs in Victorville, less unemployment, less permit activity, less home ownership opportunities, more unemployment, and one could argue we've seen a corresponding increase in crime. We really urge staff to continue to work with us. So we really have had one meeting. So what we would hope is we'd have the opportunity to present some recommendations on the design standards specifically and be part of the solution on that front. But the whole idea of increased lot sizes being pointed to as the reason for crime is really urban legend, and we would urge you to discard that, and we oppose that, and we'll look forward to working with you on the design standards specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. You raised a question that you raised an issue we want to answer without debate. We realize that there's going to be a lot of suggestions and input. We want to receive those. If you send them to the council, we will turn them into the staff because they're going to analyze those. We encourage you to come in and talk to the staff. If you have houses in the pipeline, or if you have tentative maps or whatever you have, you're going to get an answer by going to the counter and talking to the staff. They're prepared for individuals to come in and find out exactly where they're at, what they are vested, what they haven't, what they can do to correct it. And in regard to the goals that the council is trying to set, also, don't wait for a meeting. If you have ideas, publications, information, submit it directly to the staff, submit it directly to us so that we can consider all of those issues. The next card that I have is Chris Morgan.
Thank you. My name is Chris Morgan. I'm with United Engineering Group, but I rise also representing the McCrae Group of Companies. McCrae Group of Companies controls over 2,500 lots in the Victor Valley, about a third of those in specific plans and PUDs. One of which, I don't have enough exhibits to show everybody, but one of which is our Mojave Vista specific plan up near the intersection of Highway 15 and National Trails Highway, which we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and quite a bit of time to secure, working with planning staff. I would argue our design guidelines in that specific plan look very similar to the ones you were just shown. We have parks, open space, trails, everything that you would normally do, working with your qualified planning staff to bring quality projects forward. I point that out because this would be wiped out by this proposal. I agree with the goals that have been set forth, just not the approach and not the medicine we're prescribing here. The other thing I would like to focus on, there's many things I'd like to cover, but with 3 minutes I'd like to focus on just one thing, and that's what you've got in front of you. The setback detail you see is what would happen if you were to apply the setbacks proposed for the R1 10,000 to existing projects. Mr. McCrae and a couple of our other clients currently own finished lots, recorded lots, and many lots that are in TTMs. If you apply the setbacks prescribed and the design guidelines prescribed in this new ordinance, you'll see the lots on the left are the existing 7200 ordinance. The lots on the right are what they would look like without. A couple of key details to note. On the left side, you'll notice the backyards are approximately 40 by 60. That's about 2,400 square feet of good usable space in the backyard. The ones on the right, that backyard is 1,500 square feet. It's 40% smaller. All of the space ends up in the side yards. A couple of other things to highlight. The product that ends up on that lot to the right becomes a very thin product with those setbacks. The garage is more than 50%. It's anywhere between 57 to 60% of that front. It doesn't meet the design guidelines. Staff has said that, yes, you can still meet design guidelines. I'm not seeing how. So I would urge Council and Commission to please dive into this much detail to see how these existing projects would actually comply. There's things in that staff report and the recommended ordinance that are somewhat contradictory. I think this needs a more thorough review and, quite frankly, a better way of going about looking at crime reduction. The gentleman from KB referenced the Newman studies.
10 seconds.
I'm sorry?
10 seconds.
I myself went through it. A lot of those seem to focus more on cohesive communities and things to spur the residents to want to keep an eye on their neighborhood. So I would urge you to explore things that would perhaps work with the police department, community watch, community signage, streetlights, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Buboski. Hope I pronounced that correct.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, commissioners. My name is Tom Babowski. I'm a partner in a firm that owns some property here with about 270 lots in a vested tentative tract map. Wanted to make a couple of comments about demand more than anything else regarding this proposal. There's no supply effectively of new 10,000 square foot lots because frankly there's no demand from the public. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's several older neighborhoods, particularly on the south side of town, and I don't know for sure if these are 10,000 square foot lots, but they are what I'll call larger lots. to this day, you can go there and see that probably 1 out of 4 is unbuilt, unimproved with a house. And if I can be frank, a lot of those houses around there with those larger lots, they sort of serve as private junkyards, if I could be so bold, with broken cars, broken boats, all kinds of debris. So again, the public has not wanted to occupy those types of, at least in recent years. So I'm confused by why the city would want to mandate something that's simply not in demand. There's plenty of market housing studies that demonstrate that consumers of housing are far more interested in things like the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, quality of fixtures, layout of the house, square footage of the house, et cetera. Lot size is, frankly, an afterthought. It's very far down the list. I think this kind of proposal would limit growth in the city, frankly, bringing it to a halt. Properties then would fall in value, and the city would be less attractive. In summary, I don't think there's anything magical about 10,000 square foot lots as a magical pill to solve the city's noble goals. I mean, even your own planning department is saying that 7,200 square foot lots would be okay in PUDs. So the whole 10,000 square foot number, in my mind, is frankly arbitrary. And like everybody else has said, it's going to take a lot more review to come up with an answer, like I said, to your respectable goals that you're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card that I have is John, I started to say Myers, but I'm not, M-Y-H-R, is it Myers? John? Close, okay.
Hi, my name's John Myrie. I'm a real estate developer and property owner in the city. I'm going to echo some of the comments about the process. I mean, what you guys are talking about is big time affecting your general plan, and to just come in with just calling it design guidelines, this is, you know, what I see in your map. I see spot zoning. I see stuff that will have unintended consequences written all over it. You know, the analysis should be done through an EIR. I mean, that's what CEQA demands here when you talk about the kind of changes that are being proposed here. Talk about, we know we're hearing about economics. You know, I haven't heard anything about the water situation we have in California. Urban sprawl. I mean, what's magical about a 10,000 square foot lot? You're going to, the average is going to end up quarter acres. You know, why not 12,000? Why not 14,000? You know, it makes, you know, there's got to be a nexus here, and the process should be through an EIR. I would make the point also that there's no nexus from the analysis about crime related to lot size either. So my comment is just about the process. There's a lot of other speakers here, but I'll just ask you to take a look at the process and take a step back. Do this through a general plan amendment, look at it through an EIR, bring in experts, do the analysis right before you make such a huge change to your general plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Brian Goodman?
Evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and Commission. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate it. I represent Lewis Operating Corporation. I think some of you know Randall, and he wishes he could be here tonight. Unfortunately, he had another engagement. As property owners in the city, what's good for Victorville is good for us, and I think we all feel the same way in the development community. How we get there, of course, is obviously where the debate is. I think the design guidelines are a great start. I think it's something that we support, and I think we can do better. And I think what's been proposed is a good framework. I think it needs a lot of work. There were some things in there I thought that were a little unusual, and I won't go into the details of that. This is really two issues that we're talking about. We really need to kind of, I think, separate them, and we have a little bit more today than I think at the commission meeting, but the design guidelines from the lot size issue. The correlation between lot size and value is really a misnomer, and it is very much going away from where most of the other planning world and development world is going. If you look around, mostly you see developments becoming more dense and that having a reduction in crime. Maybe that isn't the case here. I think the crime stats that we saw need to be developed just a little bit more. There's a lot of detail, and I think things that go into that should be studied more. One thing that wasn't talked about yet was financing of infrastructure. I don't think I heard that, but having such a significant land use change has quite a dramatic impact on how we finance infrastructure. So we can add that to the list of things to think about. One thing I heard during the presentation that really kind of concerned me was some misinformation that was presented, and there was a slide that showed how we could use the same street pattern by converting from 7,200 to 10,000 foot lots. And while the same street pattern is true, engineering plans aren't done in 2 dimensions. They're done in 3 dimensions. So when you change your lot size, you change your grading plan. When you change your grading plan, you change your street plan. Your drive approaches change, your sewer laterals change, your catch basin on your storm drains change, not to mention the elevation of those utilities. So the fact that engineering would be thrown away is a fact. The other issue is that we could still use our specific plan and develop with 7,200 square foot lots as opposed to what we have today. And the specific plan, I think, is it's a land plan. It's not just a mix and match and just change the lot size and you move on. There are parks, there are streets, street layouts, and other things that were a part of that specific plan that when we go from 700 units to about 400 units, it doesn't make any sense anymore. So I think opening up a dialogue with the folks who have specific plans or PUDs and saying, what can we improve? What can we work on together might be a good way to do that. I know there's 14 of them or so.
I hate to do this, but your time is up.
Okay, sorry.
Now, if you have something that you want to submit or some information, please do so. If you don't want to do it tonight, we'll take it later. But we do want the information that you have. We appreciate the input, but we do have a lot of speakers.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you. Paul Newkirk.
That was fast. I just put my card in. Hi, I'm Paul Newkirk, and I own several hundred lots here, mostly 7,200 square foot. I don't really want to speak to that particularly, but I did. Something's been thrown into this mix that, and I think you are rightly worried about it, but it's not going to be resolved by this plan, and that's the rental housing problem. You know, I'm 62, so I've been through 4 big real estate cycles, and in 89 to 94 in that real estate cycle, there were huge vacancies that happened from Cucamonga down to Corona. Lots of rentals, lots of cars on the street, same problems that you're experiencing. But what solved that problem and resolved it wasn't big government stepping in. It was the unseen, you know, the invisible, Adam Smith's invisible hand of commerce. As those rental properties increased in value, those people took a profit. They took a profit and they sold it to younger families who were going to be homeowner-occupied families who would then take care of the property. They have less cars in the street. They are interconnecting with each other, and the neighborhoods are going to get better. So your neighborhood crime problem is going to get better. Phoenix had, areas of Phoenix had a much higher vacancy rate and foreclosure rate than you guys have, and their problems are already resolved in the same way that I'm talking about. So I just wanted to, I don't think that should be mixed in with the program that we're talking about here. And then finally, I don't think that providing larger areas to store motor homes on residential lots should even be in the equation. If people can afford a motor home, they should take it to a commercial area and store their motor homes. And allowing for motor home storage on single family lots, it's already happening too much. Crazy. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The next card is Paul Chung. Maybe oh, Nelson Chung. Sorry about that. I'm sorry. I was looking at two cards at the same time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, and Commissioner. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Due to the time frame, I don't want to elaborate too much on what other people said, but I do want to assure you, we do want, as a home builder or developers, whatever is good for the city truly is good for us, and we want to build in a robust city with good school rating, with good safety rating. But in the meantime, I just want to quickly share with you some statistics. As you know, our neighboring city, Apple Valley, in majority, they have a half-acre lots. But if I tell you, we have 3 zip codes ranging from median price from 152 to 162, and they have 145 to 155. You start to wonder why. And also similar analogy is city of Irvine, and they have 2 neighboring cities. One is Santa Ana, one is Tustin. As you may know, city of Irvine has lots from like 2,500 to, in general speaking, 7,000. They rarely go to 10,000. Their median is 700 to 1.9 million, and Santa Ana is 3 to 400. And Tustin is 600 to 700. And with those statistics, you start to wonder why the bigger lots does not necessarily relate to higher value. And just to, because I'm running out of time, there are a lot of ideas we can quickly to fix the crime rate or the raised value issue on a technical level. For instance, if we can revisit the plan so we have more defendable space, defendable community by limiting the access to the public street, for instance. And if we can improve the edge condition. Yeah, for instance, before I came in, I drove up and down 2 hours through the city. There are a lot of chain link fence, beat-out wood fence back to, say, even Bell Valley. That will be the image we cast to the future home buyers or our own resident. So we shouldn't blame others if we allow that to happen. Well, there are just a lot of thoughts that we can discuss on a more technical level, but fundamentally we do need economic development because money talks. Good school, good police department, good fire department all need money. So we need economic development. We need to bring in employments to boost up the economy. Well, that's it. Thank you. If I have a chance next time.
Thank you. And if you have any of that data, I wasn't able to take it down. We've got it though. But if you have any additional data, submit it. It's interesting data. We'd like to look at it.
Thank you.
We may have it, but in case we don't, thank you very much. My next card is Mr. Dan Tate.
Thank you. The objectives that were established by the City Council are admirable, and as a 30-year resident, very much wanted. But let's talk about value. Value is directly related to jobs, and jobs are directly related to labor force. And when I brought this issue to the attention of the staff, they said, yeah, Dan, the residents of 7200s are uneducated. They don't do our labor force any good. Well, if they're uneducated, then our schools are failing. So it seems to me we're going after the wrong people, going after the developers, when we should be addressing our attention to the school systems. Defensible space dictates limiting access to private areas. It dictates defining private areas clearly. Larger lots create more access for criminals to access and less actual visibility. Defensible space dictates that we have more access, direct access, to recreational opportunities, walking trails and paseos. So in that regard, I would say that smaller lots actually go further in achieving the city's objectives to a quality of life where people feel that they can safely go out and walk, ride their bikes, and engage in social activities. We talked about crime. Every report I've read over the last 2 weeks says crime is directly related to unemployment. It's directly related to unengaged youth. And it's directly related to the lack of recreational access and opportunities. I would urge the council to look at the outcomes, to consider the outcomes that need to be identified to avoid making unintended consequences. I think what we're trying to do here is legislate buyers' actions and behaviors, when actually what we're seeing here is a result of the recession. It's happened all over the country. And that's something that's out of this council's control. The council can go far in achieving objectives by actually encouraging smaller lots with greater open space and recreational activities. And I'd like to add that being involved in the last 3 city council races, my main platform was additional police protection. In this city, supported by the captain of the local sheriff's department, said that we didn't need any more police officers because crime was down. Now, 2 years later, staff is telling us that crime is a problem. I would say that we've got to really reconsider the causes of this crime before we engage and embrace policy that could actually go against what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Don Brown?
Don Brown, President of Lee & Associates, commercial real estate broker. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, members of the Planning Commission. I want to thank you for calling this joint City Council and Planning Commission study session tonight. I think as all the speakers have expressed tonight, we're all very concerned about the path and direction that our city has taken. I think unanimously and overwhelmingly I've heard tonight the concern is about the quality of life in our community. Are we going to be able to legislate this by reducing the size of lots? I don't know. Are we going to be able to legislate this and get rid and improve our quality of life by imposing architectural guidelines? I don't know. But what I do know is staff spent some time on this report, and it was well prepared. But I think there was an absence of comment and input from the real estate and development community prior to coming to this session tonight that needs to be analyzed and reviewed by Commission and Council and come up with some solutions. I think you have an opportunity right now to look at some of the problems that face our city, address those problems, and perhaps come up with a cohesive plan to where we can go forward in the future in making Victorville a better place to live. I'd like to ask you to continue these workshops, allow the development and real estate industry to provide you with the comment and the input that you need, as well as our community members, so that good decisions and lasting decisions can be made. That's all I have.
Thank you, Don. Unless I have lost cards, that was the last card I have. Going to, did we have any more cards turned in? We didn't, okay. This has been interesting to me, I'm sure all of us. We have been dealing with the downturn in the economy for some time. Difficult. We have very little effect on it. A lot of other governmental entities have a great effect on that. And it has been suggested that that we have small lots, we have larger lots, we have bigger homes, we have smaller homes. We know that in the end that the marketplace is going to determine what the demands are. And we also know that the building industry is going to meet that demand. And I don't think we're going to be able to control that. A lot of the things that was talked about tonight in trying to, the image is actually part of our code enforcement program. And of course, that we are being encouraged by where we have property owners where the neighbor has 4 cars that are torn down. And that neighbor is mad because he's restoring a classic that'll be worth $100,000, and the neighbor is just thrilled that we made him move it or put it in the backyard. It seems like every time we please someone, we displease somebody else, and that's the job that we're hired to do, and that's why we take so long and get so much input, because I doubt that any solution will be acceptable, no matter what this body does here, unless we have a lot of input from the community, and that's not only the building industry, the developers, but the homeowners. And we're getting a lot of, based upon comments I'm hearing from staff and council, they're getting a lot of input from homeowners. Also, a lot of interest in this subject. Again, our goal is to spruce up the city, make it look better, and hopefully the economics. We have learned that in the downturn in the economy, we get a lot of vacancies and we don't have disposable income. That's a bad situation. We can't control it. When the economy takes off, we know, based upon 7 years of building, that builders couldn't hardly keep up with the demand for buying. Those people didn't buy unless they had jobs. And when the jobs went away, it was like a wave that went across this country. We're going to do the best that we can, although too much government interference is always bad, in my opinion, to find out what we can do to make the community a better place so that we won't have the problems that we had in the past. There are some things that we simply can't do. We have a huge homeless population, and at this point in time, I doubt anybody is going to come forward and build a subdivision for them. And if you did, they wouldn't want to live there anyway. And that's a problem that's affecting everyone in this community, including the business people, shoppers, and we have very little control over. But we're still working with other entities and higher governmental entities to try to solve that too. So one thing that I am going to urge the council, my opinion only, we need to find a resolution to this quickly, but with all the input that we could possibly get. We want to encourage recommendations from individuals that we can. One of the things that we are not going to do, and the reason I say this is because I had 2 individuals that come and talk to me and want to put this off for 3 or 4 months, and they might as well said, hold this till election time so we can make an election issue out of this, and it's not going to happen. Not going to allow that. This is not a political issue. It's an issue that affects 120,000 people in this city. We care about those people. We're going to do the right thing, and so for the 2 individuals that now don't speak to me, the intent to drag this out and then have the discussion starting in September, October, it's not going to happen. So put that aside, make a commitment to work with us. We make a commitment to work with you. We need your help. We need your input. We need your ideas. Questions of staff or comments from council members, and this time I'll start on my left. Kennedy.
Having said all that, I wouldn't have missed this. My own opinion is that Thomas Jefferson was right, that government governs best that governs least. The less we do, that tends to be better for the community. I think that's true locally. I think it's true nationally. Now, having said that, we can't not govern at all. I mean, we do have to establish some standards. What I'm still in a quandary about is whether there is anything magically better about a 10,000 lot size versus 7,200. I mean, we live on a lot that's smaller than that. Nice development. We have the golf course behind us. There's justification for those smaller lot sizes. I was kind of hoping, rather than just make these political discussions, I was hoping that we would get some education about about what the real benefits are of increasing those lot sizes. And basically, we've heard from the development community, but if there are some real benefits, I'd like to know what they are. I think our economic problems and the value issues in Victorville are related to an economy that's trying to recover. I think they went over the cliff in 2008, and they're slowly, gradually coming back. I mean, I'm having a hard time seeing that lot size connected to value. I also don't see that it's part of our crime problem, but these houses jammed next to each other seem like that could be contributing. I don't know. That's kind of rambling, but that's probably
Council.
all I really have.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Councilmember Vyas.
I think that after spending a lot of time understanding how Victorville grew so quickly, and from what I understand from our planning department, was that previous councils just were more concerned with getting numbers of residents in Victorville. They wanted to get over the 100,000 threshold. I'm not really sure and understand why that was so important to them. But now that we're there, I think that we need to take a look at what we can do better as far as growing smart. I drive neighborhoods. I mean, I live in Victorville. I own a couple of houses in Victorville. And the lot size that I have now is 9,500 square feet in Eagle Ranch. And I think it's too small. But, you know, that's what I signed up for. I wanted to live in Victorville, and I wanted the sidewalks. I have a home in Apple Valley that's on 2 acres, and it is too much land for me to take care of, and I felt like it was too difficult. And I wanted something that I could maintain, and so that's what I signed up for. And I wish I would have had just a little bit more to put an RV in the back, but I don't. So I don't have that. And I think that some of these neighborhoods that I drive through that have 4,000 square foot lots, they've turned into ghettos. And I think there is something to lot sizes, and I think that it's difficult for our code enforcement to keep up with all the complaints of the neighbors complaining about the cars, and I know that I complain about it on my street, and there are RVs parked in the front and parked in the street for months at a time, and there is no place for them to go, and multiple families living in one home, and they just have storage in their garage, and they park on the street and on their yards. So it is difficult, and I think that we need to look at it and allow what we need, I think, is to empower our planning commission. I don't think that we have provided a lot of professional development for them, and I think that we need to do that, and we need to empower them to help clean up Victorville, make it a safer city. And I think that we've let the developers get away with cramming in as many homes as they can and walking away with huge profits and leaving the city to clean up. And we have fences falling down now. We have a mess to clean up, and we have a lot of crime in our city, and a lot of blight. And I think that we need to do things and improve our building standards. And I would like to see this done quickly and not drawn out, and empower our planning commission to meet those goals.
Thank you, Councilmember Vance. Councilmember Garcia.
Yes, of course, I think everything has been already voiced by the two council members. My concern is the smaller lots. I do believe, seriously, I really do, that those smaller lots do create more crime in the city. There's more than one family living in those small quarters, and there's more cars, there's more crime. So I'm not in favor of the smaller lots, and for the different reasons that has been already explained.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember Garcia. Councilmember McCracken.
You know, it's interesting because this came to the Planning Commission on a very quick basis, and I want to thank staff for apologizing for that tonight. It's the first apology I've heard, actually. I don't believe that the council gave direction or asked staff to come forward with increased lot sizes at all. Residential development guidelines and standards is something that we've been talking about for the last decade, but increasing lot sizes was not one of them. However, that being said, the idea of increasing lot sizes is before us, and it seems to be that we will continue to talk about this for a little bit of time. I agree with Councilmember Baez that we ought to empower our Planning Commission. I think we ought to have an all-day or a couple-day workshop where all of you roll up your sleeves, come to City Hall, spend time with our planning staff, the Planning Commission, and come to a workable solution that is win-win for everybody. Not something where we're shoving 10,000 square foot lots down your throat, which seems to be what we've been attempting to do. You know, I have a couple questions. They're rhetorical, but they go to staff, they go to the captain of our police department. How does this proposal reduce crime now? Because I don't see how it could possibly reduce crime now. How does it fix our problems right now? A lot of the issues that have been brought up here tonight, going to a 10,000 square foot lot does not solve those problems right now. The only thing that solves those problems is putting more deputies on the street. And I guarantee you that our captain would probably back me up on that. In fact, he's the first captain that has indicated, Mr. Tate brought this up, that we ought to have more deputies on our streets since I've been elected to the City Council. So I applaud him for that. We do need more deputies on our streets, and that's one way to solve the crime problem. It's not the only way. I do like some of the residential design guideline standards, but again, that discussion is mute until we figure out what we're going to do with lot sizes, because it all plays into that. You know, we live in America still. Last time I checked, we have a free market system. We still have a society that believes in the American dream of owning a home. If you want a half-acre lot, Apple Valley is the place for you. If you want a 7,200 square foot lot, we got plenty of homes here in Victorville that are for sale. See one of the many realtors that are in the audience tonight. The reality is that someone made the comment that a lot of people that live in Victorville commute down the hill because that's where the work is. And that's exactly the case. No matter how hard this city attempts to, through economic development, create jobs, and we've done a great job of doing that, we're not catching up. And the jobs are still going down the hill. People are still driving down the hill. And I'm sorry, but if you're a father and a mother and you have 3 kids at home, you're not coming home to mow your lawn. You're coming home to play catch with your son. You're coming home to help your kids with their homework. You're not out in your backyard. And I've seen plenty of pictures of these tract developments, even at 7,200 square feet, where the rear yards aren't even landscaped. So let's go ahead and increase those lot sizes to 10,000 and have more dirt blown around throughout the high desert. I just think that there's too much that has not been discussed. This proposal has been pushed too quickly. I think that without having input from our sheriff and our own police department on how this would somehow reduce crime today, it won't. But I'm more than willing to hear them on that issue. No one has brought up the issue of the tax base and how the reduction in property taxes might affect this city. Believe it or not, even though we were a sales tax city for numerous years while our mayor was the city manager, we are no longer just sales tax. We also get some of our tax base from property taxes, and this will have a tremendous effect on our general fund going forward. So, you know, you talk about wanting to put more deputies on the streets. This would only reduce the amount of deputies we'd be able to put on the streets. I just think there's way too many unanswered questions. There's way too much of a hurry to get this pushed through. I think that we ought to take our time. I think we ought to empower our Planning Commission to work with you all and take the time that is necessary. I agree it doesn't need to be an election year issue, but it doesn't need to happen tomorrow either.
Thank you, Mr. McEachran. A couple of comments, and then I'm going to turn this over to the Chairman of the Planning Commission, Mr. Porter. One of the things that we have to look at, and we are looking at, and we will continue, is how it affects the city economically. One of the things that we get really concerned about is disposable income per household. If you have individuals in a home that takes 100% of their money to pay the bills, and they have no money for disposable income, then they don't shop, and then we don't get any sales tax. And they also don't buy new cars, and they have a limited budget. That has a pebble effect in the lake. It keeps spreading out and affect more and more people. Code enforcement is a part of this. The economics are a part of it. The environmental considerations are a part of it. And I remember some years ago that we just struggled on where to put parks because we didn't have a concentration of people. We had an area that almost needed a park, and then the next development was a half-mile away because the land was cheaper. And as a result of the land being cheaper, they could build a higher quality home. That was the argument, and put cement block walls rather than board fences that fall down after about 4.5 years. It was a persuasive argument, except no one considered the additional cost of public safety and fire police to deadhead a mile several times day in, day out, maintaining the street, maintaining the sewer line, water line that was not used for that 1 mile. And as a result, we had a hopscotch development, and there was no real way to cure that. One suggestion was made, didn't get discussion. I have suggested that recently, and I don't personally think it'll go anyplace, but I still think it's a good idea, and that is a reward system somehow for those people who develop in the core, because we can plan infrastructure, we can plan almost everything better, and that is to reduce development fees to encourage that they build. If you build a mile out, the development fees go for infrastructure. Infrastructure not only costs you more to get there, but it's difficult to maintain because the dead time that you have with the street crew, sewer cleaning crew, water crew, you name it. And yet the building development fees are the same, but the cost of the infrastructure is really different. The cost of the fire, the police department is really different. To run the vehicle and the backup, and then the other car that's close when there's nothing to it, and then run all the way back to begin another route, is extremely expensive over a year. Someone said we need to look at everything, and we do, if that's at all possible, because we are concerned about everything. There are then those things that we are concerned about we have nothing to do with, for example, the location of schools. And then you end up with building not occurring or stopping building, and you have a school that ends up unfinished or not built. We went to the park system, a great idea a few years ago that the federal government threw monies at cities, and that was pocket parks. They wanted everybody to build a pocket park, and so the city said to all developers, okay, if you're going to build 50 lots, 1 lot has to be set aside as a pocket park, so all the kids in the neighborhood can go to the park and not play in the street. And there was all kinds of statistics and data that it made it a safer neighborhood until they found out that that's where the guys that hung out that shouldn't be out of jail. And then they demanded that the cities come by and build restrooms for each one of the pocket parks because, all they had is a bush and the little kid lived 3 blocks away. That created a brand new set of problems. The easiest way to cure it is you no longer build pocket parks. You no longer even build small parks. You build larger parks. Building larger parks, the parents complain that little Johnny and little Jane can't walk a half mile. And therefore we have public transportation, except we also have to have guardians. For every problem we think we're curing, we sometimes create another one that we didn't think about. In this particular case, we have a lot of little problems, and it's interesting to go through the subdivisions and find that the proposals, many, if not most, of these proposals have already been met by some of the subdividers in some portions of the city. And what's interesting to me is how one builder can literally meet all these conditions and another builder can't hardly meet any of them. I don't even remotely understand that. We have some beautiful neighborhoods. They have side yards. They have larger lots. They have all the amenities we talked about, and they didn't turn into ghettos either. So it wasn't the cost of the house. So we got a lot to do. And the people who know this best are the people who are involved. One of the major problems of the economy was that the federal government said everybody's entitled to a home, and got it to the point that they were literally paying the person unqualified to go into the home. Well, naturally, when the economy went south, they lost the job, they lost the home. Then there's the domino effect down the street. That wasn't our fault. That wasn't the building's fault, building industry's fault. Federal government should have never gotten involved. And we already have congressmen, again, saying everyone's entitled to a good home. Let's throw money at communities and make them build low and moderate income housing. We have a whole city full of low and moderate income housing. That's another equation that we have to discuss, though, as a part of this. Are we going to grant amenities for that? And I personally hope not. So we have a lot to do. We do need your input. The city council members that I've talked to are really sincere. The planning commissioners that I've talked to are really sincere. We have an opportunity, because we have a lull before we take off again and start building, to work together and build the city that we all want, or at least majority of us want. And that includes all of you people who are involved in this, and we do want the input. So from my point of view, we really appreciate the input. We really appreciate submitting additional data, statistics. It's really interesting, and it's very helpful. So, Paula, Planning Commissioners.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just a few short comments. I do have a concern for the development community, especially, who have put a good faith effort in putting their finances and investing in developments and expecting it to be under the 7,200 square foot development code. In some cases, or in maybe most cases, they may lose money, and I don't think that is something necessarily that is fair. So that should definitely be taken into consideration. The other thing, though, especially as a parent of two really young kids, crime is something that is definitely something that needs to be taken a look at. But what I want to know is, and I think what we do should be data-driven more than anything else, but will any of these things reduce crime? As an educator, most of the data that I've read says that after-school programs reduces crimes as much as any one event or any one thing. So I don't know how much of this is going to affect the increase or decrease of crime, personally. Again, we're hearing a lot of potential solutions, and I feel like a lot of opinions have been stated, but I don't think we should do this based off of the opinions of this body or of the development community. I think it should be data-driven. It should be based off of factual information so that we can develop a plan that makes the most people happy. The mayor's already said that we're going to make a decision eventually. Ultimately, the city council will make the decision. Not everyone's going to be happy, but as many people as possible, their opinions should be taken into consideration. But more than their opinions, the data should really push the direction that this body goes into. So there's my 2 cents on this issue.
Yes, I very much echo a majority of the comments we've heard here tonight, so I'm not going to hash over those again. But I think as a planning commissioner, it's been made loud and clear recently that our city council has goals that say we want to work on a safer community, higher value residential, better and high paying jobs, more attractive community. Okay, those are very basic and general things that we all want, maybe a little bit harder than we think to try to achieve, and that's what we're working on tonight. I'm not sold that it's going to come down to a lot size or not. I think the consensus tonight I agree with. It's probably a bigger animal to struggle with than just a lot, and that may or may not be part of the equation. With that, I think Councilmember McCachran had a very good idea that I would be in favor of. If we wanted to, I'd be willing to go into a more of an in-depth study session if the Planning Commission and any of the community members involved want to go to the next step and try to hash this out a little bit deeper, try to find possibly other solutions along the way, and we'll all be educated because we're all in this together. As city planners, city staff, and business people that are in the audience, we're all in the same boat. We all just want to get to the end result, which is a better quality of life in the city of Victorville. The proposed design guidelines that staff brought to us, I'm very much in favor of those designs. The package is very thick. They've been working on it for, what, years, Chris, right? A couple of years. And I like what I see there. In that was the lot size. I knew that there would be some pushback, pullback, and that's what we've been talking about mostly tonight. I look forward to working on this further, and if I had to make a decision on the lot sizes tonight, I would not be able to do it at all.
Commissioner Huber.
Yeah, I have a lot of comments, but I'm not going to say them tonight. I echo Mr. Brown. I do have a lot of comments, but that could come up another time. I echo Mr. Brown's comments and Ryan McEachran's comments. I thought they were very good comments, and that's all I'm going to have tonight.
Well, I want to thank Scott and Chris for your guys' presentation. I know a lot of hard work has gone into it based upon what you were asked to do. I also want to thank everyone in the audience that spoke. I took down a lot of notes relating to this issue, and yeah, there's no one simple, easy answer relating to both lot size plus all the other issues that go along with that. So I would look forward to having a workshop to where, you know, a day-long session where we would basically be able to get together and see what actually makes sense for the community, because when we all live here and it serves us best, you know, for the better development in our community. So thank you all.
I commend the staff on the hard work that they've done on the guidelines. I know that that did take them quite a while to do. It didn't happen just overnight, believe me. And I do think that a lot of our problems will be resolved with code enforcement. There is a big lacking of code enforcement, and it may be that we need more code enforcement officers than we need police officers. But I would also like the input of the police department on what they think about the difference in the lots and how it might affect law enforcement. And I think that this has been very instructive to me on getting your input so that I can make a really good decision ultimately. Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Chairman Porter. Thank you, planning commissioners. And thank you for participating. I too have a long list of questions to submit to staff. I know we're going to do this again. I believe it'll probably be with the Planning Commission, but certainly we'll have a meeting and staff because we have questions that they need to answer. I am sincere when I say we need your input. A lot of the builders I know and have known for years, and they're not going to be going away. And you have a lot at stake, not only what we do in the immediate future, but the future of the city. So thank you for your input. Thank you for your comments. And for the recommendations, you have questions in regards to if you have lots that are in the process of the pipeline, please check with staff. And thank you for bringing up the fact that we are going to be sensitive to people who have spent considerable amount of money. We don't want to change the rules in midstream and cause a hardship when we don't have a real good definitive reason. And we want to make sure that we do have good reasons and we have the cooperation of the community to support that. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your input. And that I'll adjourn this council meeting at this time. Ms. Porter?
And I'll adjourn our Planning Commission meeting at this time.
Thank you again.